Discipled Warriors Handbook. We, in summer of 2023, God called me to start the Discipled Warriors ministry. In late summer through the fall of 2023, I began building this ministry under the supervision of my pastor. I asked him to, if we could meet once a week, for me to just share my thoughts, my notes, how the curriculum that was that I was seeing, and then how to explore this. And he did diligently. We met once a week for 3 or 4 months, 4 months, as I built out this the Discipled Warriors intensive program. She'll run the intensive in January of 2024. We had 30 men go through that intensive program where we stayed at the church for 2 nights, for 48 hours straight. We camped out in the church. And the guys did so good. Anyway, the lessons from that, then one of the men a month or so later suggested that I do a podcast with these lessons. And so I did. So I had to break the lessons down from that 2-day stretch into podcast. And it came out to be 26 podcasts. Didn't even think about the significance of 26. We'll get to that in a minute. But so I did a podcast, and you can still find it on Spotify and Apple Pods. That podcast that ran from spring 2024 to spring 2025. So those podcasts, then in the fall of 2025, I turned those podcasts into Wednesday night Bible studies for men. I thought, well, it'd be another outlet for men to get together on Wednesday nights. It's for our church. I think a lot of churches do have kind of Wednesday night service where it's some sort of Bible study or whatever. So we did a Discipled Warriors Bible study, and it wasn't very well thought out. I transformed those podcasts into kind of lessons, and then we just read through the lessons and discussed the lessons as a group of men every Wednesday night. And I had a handful of men show up diligently from fall of 2025 to spring of 2026. Again, 26 lessons. About early spring of 2025, excuse me. 2025. Started thinking about how this really should be a book. It should be a handbook. In my military background, we had one of the books that my community, everybody in my community is very familiar with, is the Ranger Handbook. So I stole the name from the Ranger Handbook. It's the basics, right? It's the basics behind what it means to be a ranger, right? It's SOPs. Well, I just called it the Discipled Warriors Handbook. It's the basics on the ministry. There might be more to the ministry, less, but there's different facets, but the basics, the material from that first intensive workshop is contained in the handbook. So it was revised. That was the third, fourth revision of those ideas into a book. And then of course, you had editors and, input cleanup, in the book, and then published. And so it was published technically published in February of 2026, but I got my hands on copies of it in late December 2025. And then we ran the first cohort kickoff at my church was scheduled to run in January of 2026, but we had bad weather, so we had to push it to early February of 2026. But so it became the one day, and that a one-day session, and really that one day is focused on the cohorts getting together, working together, learning what it means to be a cohort, doing some lessons that only work when you're physically there. I'm sure they'd still work. We could probably do one online or something, but it's more important to physically be there for some of these lessons. And so they did them, and then they're using the handbook after that to go through each lesson for the next 26 weeks. And some of the material that we covered in the cohort kickoff are in the handbook. Some of it, but it's not the same. It's a different flavor. The handbook starts with how do we know God exists, to how can we trust the Bible. It establishes those foundational ideas before it goes into what does it mean to be a steward. Stewardship is one of those ideas that's big in Discipled Warriors. Men are the stewards of God's creation. God says, I want you to steward a portion of my creation. In other words, we're responsible for a portion of God's creation. And that might just be ourselves, right? As before, you get married, before you have assets and all that, you steward yourself. And because we belong to God. Whether we realize it or not, we belong to God. And everything we see belongs to God.